and Infrastructure and Environment Policy meeting. Also, I'd like to thank our Cabinet Member Andrea Lewis, Martin, Mark Barrow, and all the other officers involved. Welcome to the meeting. Right, first of all then, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Peter Jones.
Sure. Disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Any?
None.
No, none. Good. Item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the Thursday, the 21st of October. For accuracy, page 1, page 2, and page 3.
Move, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Second.
Any matters arising on the minutes? Good. Okay. I take it, Mark, you are presenting agenda item 4.
I am, Chair.
Okay. I'll leave you in our capable hands.
Thank you. Afternoon, all. If it's okay with members, I'll run through the report briefly, and then I'll give you some context and some scope of the outcomes of what we're expecting to achieve by this strategy. Is that okay? Hopefully, as you're aware, the Council adopted a Green Fleet policy in 2018 with a view, we were the first in Wales to do it, with a view to optimising our acquisition and use of our corporate vehicles. The policy set out a series of targets, incremental targets over a 3-year period to improve our performance in terms of CO2, the extent of low emission vehicles we use, the fuels we burn and the mileage we cover. We set roughly a 5% target every year for improvement at that time, but when the Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and a net zero commitment for 2030, Welsh Government also set out some expectations in a strategy whereby they want public sector fleets to have all their light cars and vans low emission by 2025 and all the other vehicles by 2030. That has set 2 deadlines for us, and therefore we had to look to review the Green Fleet policy in accordance with these new deadlines. We had the Welsh Government Energy Service come in and do a review in the Council in early 2021, and they helped us through that review develop the strategy we're presenting to you today. The aim of the strategy is to deliver a vision for the Council of an optimised, sustainable and decarbonised vehicle fleet by 2030. And that is designed to complement and enhance the Green Fleet policy you approved back in 2018. The strategy is a 9-year strategy. It sets out a strategic delivery programme with key objectives. To transition the Council fleet to zero emissions by 2030, underpinning our net zero commitment. In the same way, we help meet the Welsh Government's expectations and ambitions of light commercial vehicles by 2025, heavy commercials by 2030. We've got to put in a charge point infrastructure to support our fleet to do that transition. We're looking to improve the use of our fleet through driver behaviour and performance management of vehicles. We're going to decarbonise grey fleet, which is the private mileage members of staff undertake in their own vehicles. The business mileage they undertake there. We need to improve our data systems because they're fairly broad at the moment, and we need to have one way of reporting our greenhouse gases, particularly in relation to fleet. And the impact of all this means we've got to revise our policies, our procedures and our working practices, because it is a wholesale change to the way we support particularly our frontline services that use vehicles. The strategy has got 20 key action points in it, and it's in the appendix. But they tend to focus on adopting a transformational approach to this because it's such a big programme. We've got to realign our fleet renewals. We change vehicles every 5 years, but we want to, in the next 9 years, continue to decarbonise what we've got now as well, not just change them. We need to consolidate our fleet data to help us with the performance management I referred to earlier. And we've also got to put that infrastructure in, not just for electric, because hybrid, hydrogen, and other low carbon fuels are also being considered as part of the strategy, and they all need infrastructure to support the fleet. At this moment in time, we don't know what the cost implications are, but we will be working that through the programme, and we'll be looking to get support and additional funding streams in order to help us with that transition. We'll be putting in a diesel by exception principle, so no vehicle will get changed for a diesel unless a head of service or director signs it off. And we're going to adopt what we call a whole life costing model, which is designed to prove the longer you keep ultra low emission vehicles, the cheaper they become and the more viable they become. We obviously got to engage with the stakeholders, which impacts the staff, the trade unions, and obviously externals and members. And the idea is to adopt the grey fleet, because there's a work stream that's been going on independently of this review, into the programme, so we can deliver some of the expectations of a 2018 and a 2021 review around staff travel. The size of this is the biggest thing I've seen in fleet in my career. It's massive. And as a result, there is an expectation of a potential additional post required to help us deliver this. To give members some idea of the size of it, the council's got approximately 850 vehicles, mainly diesel. We do have 45 electric vehicles at the moment, and by the end of this week, we'd have ordered 60 new more. And we burn over 1.7 million litres of fossil fuels in a year. The Welsh Government Energy Service have said to us, if we are able to transition by the end of 2030 across to battery electric, we will reduce our greenhouse gases by 90% and our energy costs or our fuel costs by 70%, saving over £1 million a year, because electric is cheaper than diesel and petrol. Our renewal cycle, as I said, is based on 5 years, but there will be substantial cost increases, and I'll touch on that in a minute for members. The renewal programme, unfortunately, does a bit of this. It's a bit wavy because it depends when contracts end and when vehicles become available. So it won't be a straight line piece of work in terms of the cost increases. And we're expecting a minimum investment in infrastructure of £750,000. That's based on the Welsh Government estimate of what we need to support the fleet. So the size and complexity of the programme is significant. And as I said to you earlier, we are still at very early stages because the market in terms of supply is relatively immature. You see a lot of cars, you'll see a lot of electric cars out there, hybrid cars out there. But when you get into van and heavier commercial, the developments are only now catching up with us, and we have a long way to go to understand what those cost implications are going to be. To give you an idea, Swansea Council is in fact the largest council in Wales for ultra low emission vehicles. So we are leading in terms of Welsh local authorities, but we've got a long way to go. 5% was never going to get us there per annum. We've got an electric refuse collection vehicle on order, 2 electric compact sweepers for the city centre, and as I said earlier, 60 vans coming in this year as well. We've only got 2 renewal cycles between now and 2030 to get this right. So when we change vehicles every 5 years, we're less than that because we're into 9.5 years, 8.5 years now. And the market is getting better, but some of the options that we need aren't there yet. Give you an idea of some of the cost implications. An electric RCV is £215,000 more than a diesel equivalent. A minibus is £100,000 more than its diesel equivalent. And a large van, sort of Amazon type van you see on deliveries, is £48,000 more expensive than a diesel. And with a fleet of 850, and it's very, very complex, there are significant costs coming our way. UK government is reducing the grants slowly, unfortunately. So we have to look at how long we keep the vehicles, what we use them for, use them harder in some respects, and look to Welsh Government to help us bridge their ambition of 2025 and 2030. Schools are a problem because there are 60 school minibuses and their funding streams are not robust at the moment. But with the savings we're hoping to make through energy savings, over £1 million a year, we're hoping to ring fence some of that to plough it back as an investment back into this transition. This year, Welsh Government are giving us £300,000 as a grant, so we can put 60 charge points in across our operational depots and start some development work around the intended move of the waste section out of Piper's Wharf into the bailing plant area. There are concerns about where we put things and the current accommodation strategy that's going on, and whether or not the grid capacity in the network is sufficient to support a wholesale transition to electric. In terms of the grey fleet, we did 1.6 million miles pre-COVID, and that accounts for 9% of the council emissions. The fleet itself accounts for 24% of the council emissions. So you add those together, a third of the council emissions are through transport, our own transport. The aim is to reduce grey fleet travel, obviously, and there's a target of 35% being muted, but that will have an impact on COVID-19, hybrid working, and the T's and C's and policies that members of staff enjoy. The fleet, unfortunately for the director, is mainly based in the Police Directorate. That's where the largest impact will fall. It will impact on the way we deliver services because we've got used to a diesel-based system. We operate in a 50-kilometre radius, which will help, and we're a relatively low mileage fleet. Most of our vehicles do less than 10,000 miles a year. We're having to upskill our vehicle maintenance staff in the central transport unit, and we're investing in training and equipping them there so they can work on these vehicles, because there's 400 volts below the bonnet, which is quite dangerous. And we are obviously going to be looking at the home to work situation for members of staff who take vans home, pay for the use, but obviously they can't charge at home at the moment. We will be engaging with the trade unions. That's a critical part, but we expect that technology will help catch up over the 9 years to make this a little bit easier for us than it appears now. The strategy is designed to make a considerable contribution to our net zero commitment for 2030. It is a significant piece of work. As I said earlier, it's the biggest thing I've seen in fleet in 35 years. We are a very, very big fleet, and that makes it a very, very big programme. And therefore, obviously, we'll be relying on the transformational programme, but also additional resource to help you deliver it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Mark, you opened up for questions now. Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. Very comprehensive report on how we move forward. You say obviously we've got to do it's an all-wheels approach in regards to the other low emission vehicles implementation. On your action plans, you've got their actions there. Has there been any consultation with the council, seeing this is for all Wales, on best practice? That's on page 910, the report point 311. And you mentioned as well on the training for the staff to work on the vehicles. Have you got any idea how long do you envisage the training to take place for? You know, obviously they've obviously with apprenticeships and qualifications, it's quite a few years, isn't it? 5 years ago, but if you can give us some indication on that. And in regards, you mentioned one of these vehicles is an RCV. Is it your intentions to bring this down on demo first, so that the guys that obviously will be working on it, you know, within CTU, but also as well, if you're going to take it out on trial, so that the people that are to work with the vehicle and out on the public highway know exactly what's involved.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, welcome. So in terms of best practice, I think that the Swansea is actually leading in that respect. There's an All Wales Fleet Managers Forum that we contribute to heavily. We are in regular contact with peers, other fleet managers, Cardiff, Neath, Carmarthen. We regularly discuss with them, and broader in the UK. We've been in touch with Nottingham, Leeds and Dundee about what they're doing, so we're learning from there, because they're ahead of us in England and Scotland. So we're learning from their experiences as well, and we're drawing on those experiences, and we will continue to draw on those experiences. So it's very much a sharing network. It's a small group of individuals, but everything we do, we share with everybody, and they reciprocate. So that's a very, very positive thing in this area. In terms of the fitters and the maintenance, the good thing about it is our guys are all NVQ level 3, which is quite a high standard already. Through Gower College, we're partnering with Gower College to deliver a personal learning account in January and March. It's a 3-day program per fitter. That's all they need because they understand the fundamentals of mechanics, but it's the electrical elements and the health and safety elements. And they'll be trained to IMI level 3, which is one below the highest attainable standard you can get. And the intention is that all of our technical staff there will be trained to that level, and that means all our staff can work on all our vehicles at any time. We are having to subcontract electrical vehicles to third parties at the moment, and we've had some difficulties during COVID with their resource levels, which has caused us some disruption. So we see it as a very resilient thing to do, not only upskilling, but also ensuring that the service is able to be provided. In regard to the electrical RCV, yes, it'll be coming in as demonstrated. We've engaged with the guys at the ground. We've had volunteers to trial it. We've spoken to the councils that have also tried it across Wales and in other areas and had all their case studies come through, and it's a very, very positive response. But there's nothing like having a taste of it for yourself. So prior to delivery, we will be bringing stuff in. We'll do an induction with the guys. We'll give it to those people who really are interested. But the feedback we've had across the UK has been very, very positive.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Good. I'll fetch June in next because she's not feeling well. So I'd like her to get her questions in just in case she dips out. June?
Yeah, it's a very ambitious programme and a detailed report. Thank you for that, Mark. Do we have any idea of any savings, if any, that we've made with the 42 electric vehicles and the 6 hybrids at the moment?
Yes, we do. I mean, they're zero emission. And when we first brought them forward into the fleet, it saved over 300 tonnes per annum. Now, given that the overall fleet greenhouse gas emissions are over 3,200, those vehicles alone have trimmed it back by approximately 8 to 9%. Now, as that rolls out, that will get better and better. But critically, the real savings we'll gain are in the heavy commercial sector, because refuse vehicles, heavy truck, they produce even more CO2 than the small stuff. So for every 10 vans, if we did 1 electric refuse vehicle, we'd make even more significant savings.
Thanks, Mark. I got just one question, going back to what Councillor White asked, and you're sending our staff over for training as a fitter or whatever. Will we be looking to employ apprentices for these vehicles?
We already have 1 apprentice who's coming to the end of his time now. And fortunately, obviously, the colleges are becoming more aware of the needs of the employer. So that's beginning to train the apprentices already at that point. And we're currently developing a succession plan, because within Central Transport, I have a number of guys in their 60s. And we're looking to develop an apprentice programme, which will obviously include electric vehicles as part of that programme.
Thanks, Mark. Go to the next one. Councillor Downing.
Thank you, Chair. You say, Mark, that we've got 60 more vehicles on order. Are they all the small vehicles? And if we are, how far away are we from getting the full range of charging points throughout the city and county of Swansea? Because by the time they get to Pontylice, they need charging. If they are the small vehicles, 2030, let's be fair, so it's only a blink of an eye away. And once we put these charging points in, would they be sufficient then to do the larger vehicles, or will we have to put different points in again? And the last one is, we have a charging point in Pontylice, so is that the council's, and can the public use it now if it is the council? Because it's in our car park, it is. Because obviously I haven't got electric vehicles, so I don't know how they work. Maybe Andrea can come in here because she's got one. In fact, the vehicle she got is getting on a bit now, Andrea.
I think I'll leave Mark answer your questions first. I can see Andrea's got her hand up, so I'll allow her in after Mark Mark, I've answered your questions, Phil.
Right. The new vehicles, they are predominantly small vans because that's what we tended for this year. But as I said, one will be an electric refuse vehicle, 26 tons, and two will be these sort of precinct sweepers you see in the city centre. So they all need different types of charge points. There's an ambition to put all those charge points in before March 2022, because that's what the grant is from Welsh Government. That's what they're giving it to us to do. I have to be clear, these charge points are for the fleet vehicles only. They're not public facing. That's not within my remit. That's within the transportation group under Stuart Davis. But in conversation with other councils, what they've learned to do is to develop systems whereby members of staff can use those charge points as well, as an encouragement to them to start getting electric vehicles and charge them for the use in the meantime. So that helps the run out across the city and county. The one in Pontyliss I don't think is a fleet one, so I couldn't particularly answer that one for you. But the intention with what we will do on fleet is we will be putting them in all the major operational sites, including the Guildhall, Mansion House, Clydach, Hale o Gorse, which is for corporate building, the baling plant and Pipehouse while it's still open. So we'll have quite the network for our own fleet. To give you an idea, the average range on a small van is 120 miles per charge. And our guys are doing that on average in a week. So we don't expect we have to charge every day and every night. And we'll be developing smart charging systems that mean we charge at off-peak electricity rates. And we only charge when we need to charge, and that reduces the demand on the grid. But we'll also be looking at potential of renewables by using PV panels or whatever we can, or battery storage, to make it cheaper and a little greener in terms of the electricity we buy. Yeah, I think that's that. I can't answer on behalf of Councillor Lewis's vehicle, I'm afraid. So,
can I just come back, Chair? Just on one thing that Mark said earlier on about I don't know how many drivers take their vans home, but obviously that's something we've got to look at, because if they cannot charge locally, then we are reversing what we're trying to do, because they have to use their own vehicles, which are either diesel or petrol, to get to the van in the first place. So that's something that we have got to look at, because we don't have to have charging points in their house. They can, because of the only doing like a couple of 100 miles a week, then they've only got to go to the local charging point to charge up, which they should be, the ones we put in should be pretty fast. So, you know, that we don't need to put them in people's houses.
It is one of the major barriers, if we're honest. We've got over 200 vehicles going home and you know, broader than the county boundaries. To give you a quick example, Leeds City Council installed chargers in members of staff's houses and then paid them back for the electricity they use. So there are significant options out there for us to be able to do this. We don't want this to become a barrier to adopting electric. We will be putting rapid chargers in a couple of destinations. But the principal idea is the guys who park up in depots overnight will charge overnight, and then we will deal with the 200 plus that we've got that take the vehicles home. We'll be working a way out to deal with that in consultation with the trade unions.
You've answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you about solar panels, the use of solar panels for charging. So you've answered that. Going on, Councillor Downing's last question though. How would you get around? I live in Mansfield, so to get a charge in some of these houses, you'd have to drag a lead across the pavement. Yeah. So that's going to be a lot of hard work or thinking for you, surely.
It may well be in consulting with the operational services. Those vans might not be able to go home. That is going to be a difficulty. But we're learning. I mean, Leeds City Council also put charge points in car parks and their staff used them at the end of the day. So when they were vacated by people in the city centres or whatever, they put fleet in there. That's another example of a different way of adopting it. Yeah. And we've got to really look at how the guys use the vans as well. I think that the underlying thing for me is we can't continue operating the way we are with electric. Things will have to change, and that's an impact on all services and all members of staff, unfortunately. But that's a consequence of climate change, isn't it? So.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I'm going to go ladies first because Andrew's been waiting very patiently in the background there. Come in, lad. And
thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on Councillor Downing's question about charging infrastructure in Pontarddulais, and we've been successful with phase 1 funding, which we installed a number of charging pillars across Swansea. Sorry, Chair, I think I dipped out then, did I?
no, still hear you.
No, yeah. And more recently, we had close to £500,000 to introduce phase 2 funding, and that also includes a city centre charging hub, charging pillars in our arena car park and city centre car parks, and we're also looking at a taxi charging hub as well, to help taxis go green. So I'm happy to circulate the list of the current locations of the publicly accessible infrastructure. As Mark said, that doesn't sit with him, that sits with our highways colleagues in transport. So I'm more than happy, if the committee wish, to circulate the list of locations for the publicly accessible charging points. And if I can come in, Chair, on the difficulties with terraced properties, that is something that we have struggled with because of the obstruction on the highway. And not only that, but if you do have a publicly accessible charging point on a pavement, there's no guarantee, because everybody pays their car tax, there's no guarantee of use of that space if it's outside somebody's house. And there's no way, in terms of resource, to police asking people to move on once their car is fully charged so that someone else can use that space. So it's a really difficult one, and I think the only answer really is more car park based charging infrastructure, and that includes supermarket charging pillars where they can stop and shop and charge up, and the radius is so great that they don't have to charge up very often, so it could be once a fortnight. So I think as we see the technology improving and the radius of electric vehicles improving, you'll see people won't need to charge as regularly, and that shouldn't be too much of an issue then going forward, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to fetch Martin. Martin's had his hand up. I'm sure he wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So on the same point, Councillor Lewis has answered a couple of points I was going to respond on, but just to pick up this issue of staff using vehicles for home to work, you may or may not be aware the reason why that was done and continues to be done, partly to reduce emissions. So the fact that, as you've rightly said, Chair, they're not driving back and forth to work, and therefore they're not using their own vehicles and then driving from the depots out to their first job. So it does reduce emissions as they currently operate, but also it does improve the efficiency as well, because they start their first job at their normal start time rather than getting to their depot or normal place of work and then travelling out to their first job. So quite clearly it's going to be a difficult balance to make any changes in that and not then have adverse effects in terms of that productivity or those costs. But as Mark has rightly said, for a lot of these vehicles, they may need charging once or twice a week, and therefore it may be that we'll just have to change the way in which that home to work use is undertaken. So at least one day of the week it stays in the depot to be charged up overnight. So it's all those sorts of opportunities. And to be fair to the trade unions, they understand and they're very willing to work with us around how we move all of these issues in relation to Green Fleet and Grey Fleet forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Last but not least, Paxton.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I change the topic slightly a little bit, I think, and look a bit further forward into the future, in the sense that obviously hydrogen fuel vehicles are now beginning to appear. And I suspect this is a way that the technology will finally go. My opinion is that electric cars are going to be a temporary phase in between what we got now and hydrogen at the end of the day, in all probability. So what provision are we beginning to make or think about making for that, for when that comes in? Because there are big advantages. Obviously, you've talked about some of the problems of recharging now with electrical. You wouldn't really have those sorts of problems with hydrogen fueling, that's for sure. So there are big advantages in that, apart from the fact that obviously what comes out of the exhaust is going to be a lot cleaner as well.
Very valid point. Very valid point. Hydrogen isn't there yet. It's probably 5 to 6 years behind where it needs to be. But I think certainly with COP26, it has certainly come to the fore. You see the work that JCBs have done in terms of their intention, £1 billion gone in there with a view to putting hydrogen infrastructure in. The intention obviously was a hydrogen highway across South Wales. That was part of the thing, and there's been a lot of R&D going on in Swansea University. From a manufacturer's perspective, I met with a major European manufacturer this morning. They are concentrating on buses predominantly at the moment. That's where they see the quick win, and they're already in service in Newport and other places. These are going to be coming to the fore first. And I think what we'll find is that that technology will prove the heavy goods technology in due course. They are reluctant to dip their toe in it at the moment. There are, on the light commercial side, conversions that could be had. I'm a little reluctant around those because warranty becomes an issue. And you're quite right in what you're saying around regards to the infrastructure. A hydrogen refueling tank at one central location replicates diesel in some respects, and you just pull up, fill up and drive on. Electrical requires you to have dedicated bays and you leave it there until such time. So it's complex. The intention of the strategy is it's going to change as well. As the technologies improve, as they come on stream, we will be adapting our strategy towards that. So we're going for the light commercial stuff between now and 2025, and anything we can get in place that is viable and affordable for us, with the expectation mid-decade hydrogen will become more on stream and we'll be able to answer those questions for you better at that point, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Sorry, I just wanted to be sure in my own mind, I think, that we were already starting to think about this and making sure that what will be a fairly temporary phase, hopefully in terms of the schemes of things electrically, that we are ready when we can and when the technology allows us to move to hydrogen as soon as possible without generating too much costs in the infrastructure that we're going to put in for the electrical ones.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
On hydrogen, Paxton, I know Mid and West Wales Fire Service have got 2 or 3 hydrogen vehicles, but there again, like you say, the infrastructure is so bad. The only fueling point they've got is based in Britain Ferry, so they can't use them wheels wide at the moment. But I should imagine, as Mark has said and Martin, that the infrastructure will come in time, because I can't see, me personally, I can't see electric doing much with the loads that some of our heavy goods vehicles, such as waste vehicles, carry. So I should imagine hydrogen will be the better sort of form of fuel to carry such an high load. Martin, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I think as Mark has said, and don't want to repeat it, but the reality is we're very open-minded about what that medium to longer term solution is. We'll do what we can now, and what we can do now is with EV. I think that there are differing views in relation to whether or not hydrogen will be the long-term solution. But at the moment, the EV isn't currently a solution that we can buy into either for the heavy goods vehicles because of the range issues. Yeah. And quite clearly, even having as simple things as the fact that Swansea has a lot of hills significantly changes the situation in Swansea as opposed to some other cities. So I think the strategy is right in that it buys you time by doing what you can do now over the next 5 years. And this will be a conversation that we will have, no doubt, on more than one occasion between now and 25, 26, as the market matures and as the cost of hydrogen comes down and the technology improves. At the moment, there isn't the reliable fueling sources of hydrogen to make any switch anyway. And there does need to be an industry response to this, because we do get approached by people saying, would you commit your fleet towards hydrogen? And we say, okay, where are you in terms of the refueling discussion? And nobody's been able to come up with that complete package yet. There's a few people talked about it, and no doubt that will come in the very near future. So, you know, no doubt this will be a topic of conversation on future PDCs, and we will continue to update you in terms of progress and how the technology developments occur over the next few years.
Sorry, Martin, I wasn't meaning to be critical at all in any sense.
No,
I think it is a fact that we are policy development. It might be a bit of blue sky thinking at this stage even, but I think it needs just to be in the back of our minds to be aware of it, to make sure that we make the proper provisions as we go along.
Thanks, Paxton. I got one question. It's on point 12.3, page 17. Promote salary sacrifice schemes to assist transition. Mark, I know my wife at the moment, we've had solar panels and we go in electric in early 22. Now my wife has got a scheme where she works, where she can put in for an electric car, and she pays into this leasing scheme, but the tax then is not taken out of her, it's taken out through her wages. The payment is taken out through her wages, and then she gets taxed whatever's left in her salary. Is that what we are doing at the moment, or to encourage our staff to go electric?
I do believe we already have a salary sacrifice scheme in place, and I do believe, and Phil John is on the call as well, who works on this as well, that the green elements are within that. And the recommendation you're reading in 12.3 there is lifted directly from the business travel review in 2018 that Phil was involved in. So yes, the incentives are there. There are barriers to it, unfortunately, because obviously members of staff who want lower pay don't enjoy as much as probably people who earn a little bit more, but these are problems we've got to work through, I'm sure.
Excellent point. Okay. Is there any further questions? No. Martin?
Yeah, I was just going to catch you before you moved on, Chair, because I was just going to advise, obviously there's the document that's been produced, the Market Circular, has got 20 actions in there, and as has already been said, being a policy development committee, what we'd very much welcome, even though this report is for information, is whether you're happy with those recommendations, and particularly, I guess, the one around grey fleet, because that needs more working through. So whether you believe those actions are the right actions, if there's anything you think is missing, we'd be more than happy to take those on board. And if there's anything in there specifically you would like us to come back on at future sessions, such as grey fleet, which I think will need a further follow-up dialogue, then also we'd be more than happy to do that. So that will allow us then to frame the future policy context of this, allowing us then to inform that strategy over the next 9 years. And then that would sit under the overarching sustainable transport policy that you will recall we've mentioned will be part of the overall climate change and nature emergency agenda. So this is part of a suite of documents. I just want to make sure that the committee were aware that obviously we just would welcome any views or guidance you have either today or subsequent to today around how that policy context is emerging. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Martin.
Andrea?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted the opportunity really to thank Martin, Mark and Phil. It's a very challenging timeline, very complicated subject for delivery, actually. And also, Chair, my thanks to the committee today for the interest you've taken, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention who's on the call, Councillor Mark Thomas. And Councillor Mark Thomas and myself have been working on this agenda for, I think it's over 6 years now, Chair. So, we continue to do that. And and Mark and I work in tandem, and we pester Mark Barrow on a regular basis, I think it's fair to say. Yeah, I just wanted to add my thanks, because it's a really, really comprehensive report. It's going to be challenging in terms of delivery, but if we work together, I'm sure we can achieve the targets that have been set. And I just wanted to say thank you. So thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to do so.
No problem. And can I apologise, Mark? I'm awful sorry. I didn't see you because you wasn't on screen. I didn't notice that you had joined the meeting. So
that's all right. I've been there I have been listening intently, but I haven't felt the need. I certainly didn't. All the questions were answered by everybody on the call. So if there was something amiss, I would have been happy to step in. But I had nothing to add to the debate, to be honest. I think all the points were covered, and and all the necessary contributions made. So I've got nothing to add to, either the questions you've asked or the answers that have been given. So I just sat here quietly listening. I didn't close my eyes, promise.
Right, Joe. Okay, well, what I'd like to ask the committee, going back to page 10 and those 20 item actions, are we happy with what is set there, or would you like to see anything added? No? Good. Well, I would like to thank the officers for all their hard work. Obviously, especially on the grey fleet, there's still a lot of hard work to be done there. And on the other one, I can't remember, the blue, is it? No, it's not blue. Green fleet. Since we last looked at it, I think we've come on in leaps and bounds. I got to be honest. There's a lot of hard work that's gone into this policy commitment, and if there's nothing else to do, I'd like to thank you for your hard work for putting this agenda item together, Mark and Phil. So it's for information only. Perhaps we can look at this in the near future, fetch it back to the committee. We can't predict who's going to be the next elections in May, but perhaps we can fetch this back after the next elections to see how we are getting on in future.
Chair, may make a suggestion, Chair. I think given that we've got a little over 9 years or 8.5 years to do this, I wonder whether the committee would like to list this as an annual update on report and progress against those policy commitments, because that would be very easy to pre-arrange that then, and we can report back in line with our annual returns on emission data that has to be submitted, and then updates on any of the procurement and developing perhaps some of the hydrogen solutions that may, because I think this will move very fast in terms of this agenda over the next 2 to 3 years. So happy to speak to yourself and Democratic Services Chair, and then look to list this for a suitable date on a rolling programme basis. Okay.
Well, as Chair, I'm quite happy with those suggestions, Phil. Mark, so can the committee approve these as for information?
Great.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, boys and girls. We'll go on to Mark and Phil, if you'd like to leave. I know you're very busy people. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we go on to the next agenda item, which is the work plan. When I get to it, there we go. As you can see, our next, for the 16th of December, June will be quite happy with what's coming back in front of us. Questions for the online survey for open space, the tree policy, and climate change. Are we all happy with that? As you can see, an employment program.
Apologies, Chair. Sorry, apologies, Chair. May I come in just on that? Sorry, just to clarify. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, just to remind members that the item on the climate change, obviously that that climate change strategy has now been approved by Cabinet this afternoon. So the suggestion was when that comes to you next month is to identify any of the specific elements of that new strategy that you would like to list then in the forward programme by way of that policy development. So we hadn't intended to give a full run through of the strategy because it's already now been approved, but it's around taking the key actions out of that. So if members have any particular views once they've seen the published Cabinet report and have any views as to which elements of that you'd like us to bring forward, then by all means let us know. But it's an opportunity really to get into some of the detail rather than the overarching strategy. And I mentioned that because I think there was some concern about being able to cover those 3 items in detail in an hour or so's meeting. So that's why we're trying to narrow the focus down on the climate change report for you at the next meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Can I just go to the last thing on the work plan, where employability program update? If you remember last month, we said that we would invite the education PDC over to us. I've been informed, and June, that as a PDC, the 2 PDCs can't come together. And as you remember, we did invite the Cabinet member for education and the chair of the PDC, but for some reason they declined. I know the Cabinet member was busy elsewhere, and I think the chair of the PDC couldn't come because of work commitments. So in a meeting with Martin and two other officers, what the Democratic Services have told us, because we can't do that, we could still invite the PDC chair and the Cabinet member to us. But what I've decided, I hope that I can get your backing on this, is that whichever PDC comes up with the first agenda item for that agenda, that myself, if the education PDC sits before ours, we go to their meeting as a chair and vice chair, or vice versa. Is that okay? Phil?
Yeah, just thinking, Chair. Couldn't we hold a joint workshop, which is not a PDC meeting? That's something you can think about, and Sam can take it back to see if we can do it.
That's what I was just going to say. If Sam could look into that, the legality of it.
Yeah, Chair, if I may, it wouldn't be a formal committee meeting.
No.
It would be something that's convened privately, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it wouldn't be formally minuted.
Right.
So it would be a sort of more of a conversation between the two.
Yeah, but officers will be allowed to be.
But it wouldn't be open to the public or formally minuted.
Right. Okay. Well, I haven't got any problem with that, and I'm sure the members wouldn't have a problem with that. If we can arrange a letter going out to the education PDC and see if we can arrange like a workshop.
Well, can I suggest that you and the vice chair and the same the education, the chair and the vice chair have a chat, and then see if that's the way forward. If they say no, well, it's no.
Okay.
So have a chat first, and then you can arrange have a chat with Martin when that can be fitted in, and off you go.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
To a certain extent, Chairman, there's a people PDC is also looking at this area, but more particularly in the support that we provide for people in terms of getting them back into work, I think.
Yeah. And this is my main concern, my main worry really. There's 3 PDCs now that are virtually dealing with the same thing. I thought we would not trying to duplicate, if you know what I mean.
I think it'd be useful to get all the chairmen together sometime just to talk it out and thrash it out in that sense.
Yeah, okay then. Yeah. I'll do that then, Phil. Is there any other business on the work plan?
No.
Martin, Sam, I'd like to thank the two of you for your time. Especially, I know Martin has been very, very busy back to back today, especially in cabinet. Thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you in the next meeting, which is the 16th of December.
Marvellous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.